Okay, because I was on a Caribbean vacation for the last week, I missed episode 2 of The Last of Us. However, we're going to pick up the spare and do episode 2 and 3 in this video after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd. Episodes 2 and 3 of The Last of Us give us some background on how the cordyceps began infecting humans and how the clickers track and infect others. Joel and Tess, they expected to take Ellie only to a part of Boston outside the QZ or the quarantine zone to hand her over to Fireflies or rebels that would get her to a research lab in the West somewhere. When the location was full of newly minted clickers, Tess and Joel disagreed on whether they should turn back or to proceed west themselves with Ellie. It was decided they should take on the entire journey. Joel and Ellie hike through what would be Ellie's first time in the woods. She was marveling at all the things that were there. While Joel doesn't seem to trust her not to eventually turn into a clicker, he does continue to protect her, pointing out that there are other dangerous things other than the disease. I generally don't care for the trope of main characters disliking each other. That seems to be worn out to me, only to find out that they're great friends or lovers or whatever. Here it's more nuanced. Joel seems to see in Ellie some of his own daughter, who was about the same age when she died in the first episode. Now, while being naturally protective, he's also a little bit afraid of her, I believe. We learn that clickers are blind but have acute hearing. Once one finds you, leads all of them to follow eventually. Now, in episode 3, we're introduced to Bill and Frank. Bill and Frank they've only been mentioned up to now in episode 1 and 2 as a relay of messages on the radio. They do it by code in a type of music. When Ellie asks Joel if they're friendly, Joel says, well, one of them. Then we go back in time about 20 years to find Bill, a survivalist who, at the point that the pandemic begins, jumps into action and his small town near Boston is evacuated. He runs to the Home Depot and loots it of everything that he can, gets a generator, goes to the gas company, and makes his small town into a fortress. He plants a garden, he sets traps for clickers, and early on, one of his traps catches someone who is not infected at all. That's Frank. He was on his way to a quarantine zone hoping for a meal, and after a rocky start, the two realize that they really need each other. Through Frank's radio contacts, he convinces Bill they should have friends and said, I found somebody on the radio, which is kind of interesting. Turns out to be Tess, and she and Joel visit them and convince that a trade deal would benefit them both. The music code mentioned in episode 1 was to signal whether or not they had something to trade. 60s music, they didn't have anything. 70s music, they had something. 80s music was something else. Now, what the show is about, this particular episode is about, is how people are able to cope with the new reality. And Frank and Bill are the ones who are doing better at it, where they're able to have some creature comforts of sorts, to have a more normal daily relationship. They're dealing with keeping their house up. They're dealing with keeping gardens growing and such as that, and maintaining contacts with other people in order to maintain sociability. Now, by the end of the episode, of course, we've come to the present day, and thanks to Bill and Frank, Joel and Ellie are equipped to continue their travel west, and some interesting ways of dealing with truck batteries, which we had dealt with earlier on. We also find the true code of the 80s music. It didn't mean trouble exactly as Ellie thought, but much worse, unfortunately. As always in the series, the acting was superb, nuanced. The visuals are striking in their realism. And we, of course, if you have not seen any of this so far, it is worth seeing. You don't have to have played the game. I certainly had not, in order to be able to catch on to what's going on. And in fact, if you have played the game, there have been some changes in order to keep it interesting even to the gamers. So we recommend it, The Last of Us, in its 3rd episode now on HBO Max. And we also recommend ourselves to you as we are continuing on with videos on The Last of Us, on the retro reviews on Star Trek and Doctor Who, and also new episodes of The Bad Batch and other things as they come about. So we hope that you'll tune into this channel whenever you can. And don't forget to subscribe. Subscribing helps us out, and we would like to continue doing what we do here, so your help will be most appreciated. So until next time, don't go far.